gotta know you're doing a rock star. You promised who got you this far. I'm gonna show you all the money that I'll make without the ugly stuff you throw in my face. Everybody says I want things that I've already got.
If you're looking for Canada's hottest rock, you've come to the right place. In this edition of RockStar Weekly, we had a chance to check out Saskatoon rockers One Bad Son on their latest headlining tour across Canada. The Prairie Band is out supporting their new self-titled album, out on 604 Records. The band signed with the label after nearly 10 years of slugging it out in Saskatchewan, and they scored a top 10 hit on the Canadian rock charts with the pop-flavored Scarecrows. It's got to be almost surreal and funny for you guys in a certain way, because you're a new band to many people, but you're not a new band.
Yeah, we're the, it's kind of like an inside joke in all music of being like the 10-year overnight success, right? And we're in our 9th year, so we just hit that within the last 6 months. We really hit that, like really going from here to here sort of overnight, where we had our first top 10 hit, which ended up going number 5, a song called Scarecrows, and then after that happened, now, the touring starting to come into place, and like everything is really, we went on tour with Buck Cherry kind of immediately, and so it's like, it's an overnight success as far as like the big stuff happened overnight, but yeah, it was 9 years to get to that point, but, and it makes it, I think it makes it feel a lot better, you know what I mean? Finally getting that recognition, so.
What was the turning point for you guys?
Probably getting the new album out, which was took like 4 years to finally, we had the songs written, but we knew we had interest from 604, the label, so it was kind of delayed, and then it finally came out. But the major turning point was Scarecrows. We went with our gut feeling against some people's better recommendations.
Yeah,
so we went with Scarecrows, and it just started blowing up, and then all of a sudden it's number 5, and then we toured with Buck Cherry, and then we've been on the road pretty much ever since, so
yeah,
the turning point's been on the road, we haven't been home. It's kind of weird how it happens and you're never at home.
Yeah, this is the first time that we've had months where we've been on the road more than we've been home, so and that's the thing that we've always strived for. We're the day that we're touring more than we're back home, that's when it's hard to say you've made it at this point, but that's when we know it's now it's legit, it's all happening, so whether or not our bank accounts reflect that is a different story, but
so home for you guys at this point is Vancouver, but Saskatoon is still your home, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, I guess I'm the Saskatoon advocate here. Yeah, Saskatoon's always home. We always correct people that introduce us as Vancouver's One Bad Son, because it happens a fair amount, we live in Vancouver now, but Saskatoon's always home. It's we've been together for 9 years, and 7 of those were in Saskatoon, so it made us who we are, right?
Yeah.
And it's we try to avoid the winters.
And lastly, we'll just talk a little bit about rock and roll in general. It's coming back. It's coming back to the way it used to be. Where do you think that comes from?
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's kind of the golden era of rock and roll is 65 to 72, and a lot of my vinyl records are from that era, the majority of them, and then kind of that's when rock and roll was just the biggest genre out there, and somehow in the last 20 years, things have changed, right? There's so many genres. The internet has made it so you can access whatever you want, and I think people and rock and roll, in the last 10 years, has been kind of horrible, in a lot of ways. But I think there's always been a demand for real kind of soulful rock and roll, and it's coming back because the bands are there and the demand is there. So you see bands like Rival Sons or Monster Truck or whoever, it's I don't think it's I think rock and roll's it's never like the most. It's never as big as pop or country even, right? But it's like it's kind of always does this, and right now it's on the upswing, and it's because there's a need for that. There's always a need for honest, real music, and without a doubt, I would say that rock and roll is the most real genre out there. You know, you stack it up against anything out there, and it's like rock and roll is by far the greatest. It always has been.
Yeah, and I think, and Kurt's 100% right, like, it's two things, right? I mean, rock and roll fans never disappear. Like, it's a myth that, people don't care about rock anymore, or it's dying, or it's dead. I mean, people have been saying rock is dead since, like, 62. They just have, right? I mean, it's always been, it's a cliche, but the thing is, hardcore rock fans want to hear good rock and roll. That's all they want. They ask one thing, just for good bands. And Kurt's right, it's like, when things go up and down, bands like to blame fans at all costs. Like, well, you know what? People just aren't coming to shows. They, and they're doing this, and they're going to watch, dubstep now, or they're going to watch, back in the 70s, right? They blamed disco for everything. Well, no one's watching rock anymore. It's like, well, when the bands start to suck, people walk away. And not even if the bands are bad, but if the bands are like, Led Zeppelin is like the king of rock and roll bands, but all of a sudden every band sounds like Led Zeppelin, and then it's oversaturated, no one cares, and they move on. Then all of a sudden it's like a band like GNR comes along, and a big resurgence happens, everyone sounds like them, it dies. When the Seattle scene hit, it was the same thing. All of a sudden you had, coming out of the terrible hair metal years, it was like real honest rock and roll was back, and guys were bleeding for rock again in these great live shows, but all of a sudden that went oversaturated and people stopped caring about it, right? So that's why you get those peaks and valleys, is because, the fans just want good bands. And they don't really care if you sound like, if you sound like Poison or if you sound like Alice in Chains, but if you are really good at what you do, right, and you're legitimate, you will get fans because they just want to hear good rock and roll, whatever that is to them. So no matter the era, no matter what that sound is, that era, if you come up and you have your own sound, and, like the biggest thing we've fought with our entire career is that, coming out in like 2004 was sort of that beginning Nickelback era when Default was big, and people were like, well, you don't sound like them, you'll never make it, right? And it was like, we went through the Screamo years, and they're like, well, you don't sound like that, you'll never make it. Now it's like, indie's the big thing, right? And they're like, well, you guys don't sound like that, you'll never make it. But it's like, the band, we've always just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, because our true fans have realized that we don't really give a shit what those bands sound like. Like, we sound like One Bad Son, and that's it, So that's the long-winded answer, is like, you know what? If you're talented and you know what your sound is, people will come to you, right? Because they just want to see something real. Like Kurt said, rock and roll is real. That's it separates it from almost every other genre, is because people that do it for real, like, they're up on stage bleeding it, and the fans love it. So
the long days and longer nights have put you back into the spotlight. Everybody says I want things that I've already got. The voices in my head have stopped asking if I've gone too far. But I know that long days and longer nights will drown with you out in the spotlight.
How about recording for a label, 604, rather than recording on your own? Was there some challenges? Was it different?
It's just more, I mean, the big thing was more budget to record the stuff, to be honest, right? Like, the cool thing about OBS is like we never, I think with some bands they sign with the label, obviously like their recording process or the songwriting process is often changed because they're signed to that label, because someone, you know, comes in from the outside and changes things. With us, it was never like that. We were very, I guess that's one of the great things about having been a DIY starving band for 8 years prior, is that we weren't going to budge on what we do. You know?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden they gave us more money. So and that's the reality, is you need some decent money to record a solid sounding album. So for us, it was like we could actually look, going back to the first two albums, we listen to them now and it's like we should have spent more time and money developing the song ideas. And, so now it's like we had the time to do it, and it was still us. We still had the ball. You know, it was like we handed it off to the label and said, "You tell us how to write songs." And it's like they gave us a bunch of cash. We said, "Okay, well, let's make the best album we could."
And the nice thing too is like it was a nice thing to have happen, is that we're very stuck up about writing our own songs. You know, like we see ourselves like, you know, all the greats. You know, the Who, Led Zeppelin. You know, like bands like the Chili Peppers, anybody that was like, the thing we always loved about those bands is like, whether the songs were good or bad, they wrote them, right? They put them together, they did all the hard work, and it's like, let the label do what the label does. The nice thing with 604 is that they said, like, you know, you guys are doing what you do really well. We don't, you know, so we knew we were going to fight for our independence anyways, but they give it to us without any fight. They were like, you know One Bad Son better than we do, so you guys, like Kurt said, you know, here's the money, we made the record, and you know, outside our producer, you know, there was nobody else. It was just like, it was the record we wanted to make, so it was nice to have them, and I will say it was really good to have them say that, like, just make your record. And they honestly said, they're like, we don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but just make it, you know, and we're not going to tell you what to do. So, you know, that was like the ideal situation for us. So
when you guys put together the new album, the self-titled one, some of those songs are older songs. So how did you come about selecting all the songs?
I was angry for 3 months.
Yeah, I think we were all angry. There's only, 2 songs were previously released just because we were not signed at that point. So, and then one song we just thought never, like She's on Fire, which used to be called Sunfire, we never thought it would kind of hit its potential, right? Like it was music, it was songs like you kind of capture the moment on record and it's there forever. But sometimes you maybe don't hit the full potential. That's how it was for Sunfire, which we thought we'd redo for She's on Fire. So, aside from those 3, the rest are brand new stuff.
You know, we started recording new ones, and like all of a sudden, almost 4 years had passed just to, you know, and then 604 Records came on, and you know, so it made the songs, they were brand new to everybody else, but to us, you know, they'd been around. But the problem was that we'd written, you know, there's 11 songs on the record, but we'd written, I don't know, you know, 30, 40 plus that could have gone on the record. So yeah, like it was, you know, there was whatever, it was fighting, there was like, you know, there was arguments.
Paper, rock, scissors.
Yeah, PRS, it's like, this is, but
trying times.
Yeah. And we've actually been asked legitimately, like, well, you know, do you have a plan outside music, right? And for us, it's like, if you take the approach that this may not work, then you probably shouldn't do it, you know? I mean, we're gonna bleed, not only bleed One Bad Son, but bleed rock and roll until it's like, until either we've made it or all the blood is out of our veins and then there's nothing left to give, you know? So it's like, you know, I've personally always said that I'll cross that bridge if I ever get to it. There's no when, right? Like we're gonna do this until it's, you know, until it's huge or absolutely nothing, and then whatever, pick up a hammer, I guess.
Quickly around the table, if you weren't in a band rocking out, what would you be doing?
I thought about, you know, dancing, I guess a gigolo, just on stage for tips.
I'd be a professional swimmer.
I would, man. You would, I know. I wasn't laughing because I disagreed. I laughed because that's exactly what you would be doing. I probably would be dead for a living because I wouldn't have to work that hard, and I'm not skilled at anything else. So
I'm gonna say I'd probably be an astronaut.
I can see that.
Just cause, man, why not?
For more about this great Canadian band, visit rockstarweekly.com or onebadsun.com.